I wasn't sure if I actually sent an invitation out, so I scrambled at the last minute to do it.
You did. I got two from you.
Okay, all right, good.
So I used the freshest one.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's been a weird year. Well, I started this YouTube channel because I have a book coming out, like, what's today, the 1st? In 9 days. And then a month ago, I just thought, well, I'm not going to be able to really do anything or go anywhere, so I might as well try to do what I can on social media to bring attention to it. And so that's why I started it. And at first, I just started talking to people that were actually in the book. And then a little while ago, I was like, well, I can talk to whoever I want.
Yeah, might as well.
Might as well. And I was just like, yeah. Well, so, and I just thought, well, that'll be a good idea. And I just wanted to check in and say hi, but also just ask some questions about, I don't know. Well, how's your year been so far? Did you have anything planned this year that had to be put on the shelf because of the strangeness of the pandemic era that we're living in? Like, did you personally and the band have stuff that had to be postponed?
Yes. Yeah, I was geared up to have a super adventurous year this year. Helms Alee was going to go to, we were doing a huge tour where we were heading out to Japan for our first time.
Oh, man.
And we had Japan and Europe, and we had a week off in the middle, so we were going to go vacation in Vietnam, just a place that none of us had ever been that was somewhat along the route. So that was going to be rad and exciting.
Yeah, sure.
And then shortly after that, we were going to do another trip over to Europe. And then I was going to do this thing called the Canoe Journey. That is a regional event that all the all the tribes, I mean, tribes from all over the world join in on it, but it's here in the Pacific Northwest, the Salish Sea, all the tribes that are around this region and along the coast of Washington come together and all paddle canoes to one tribe's reservation where there's a big celebration. And it was going to be about 3 weeks of paddling and camping. And then a big celebration at the end that was going to be in Nanaimo, Canada, BC. So, Sorry, it's cutting out a little bit. Uh-oh, you're frozen.
Yeah, I froze. Luckily, I can edit this, so it'll be okay.
Oh, sweet.
British Columbia.
Yes. Vancouver Island.
Right. That sucks. Were you going to be going over to Japan by yourselves, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the European tour by yourself too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was going to be our first time going over I mean, we hadn't been to Europe in 6 years, I think. We've only been one time. That time was with Russian Circles, and it was super dreamy, fun tour. And we just hadn't had a chance to make it back since then. So.
Right. Well, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, this whole year has been a real reshuffling of everything kind of year. But you're doing all right, all things considered.
Yeah, all things considered, I'm great.
Yeah, there's not much you can really do about anything. So.
Yeah.
So where are you? Are you from Tacoma?
Mm-hmm. Born and raised.
Is that where you're calling from right now?
Mm-hmm. Northeast Tacoma.
Right. So you came of age during the Tacoma grunge rock scene?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I was in high school from 96 to 99. So Tacoma's scene wasn't especially awesome at that time, but Olympia and Seattle's were. So we were, stone's throw away from cool shit going on.
Right.
Like when I started driving, when I got my first license and car and could go just drive down to Olympia and see all ages shows super easy. That was an exciting time.
Right. And when did you learn how to play drums?
I got my first kit when I was 15. I say my first kit, but it's the kit I still play to this day. I've had a few along the way, but this one just got lucky. The first one I ever got was the one I love. And yeah, so I got that for my 15th birthday. My dad got it for me.
You've developed this really unique style where there's a lot of really cool stuff that you're throwing in like all the time. What were you influenced by as far as drumming goes? Because like on almost all of your recordings, you're just not really, you're not keeping the beat. Is there something along the way that influenced how you play? Because like you're doing all this pretty oddball stuff. I mean, not always. And then you're singing on top of it. Like, was there something that happened as far as like, I don't know, I guess music or drumming that you were influenced by when you were young that made you go, well, I'm just going to try all this stuff. And, I mean, I'm sure you've been told before that you play some pretty out there stuff, I would think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I would say that there's three major influences in terms of drumming that happened right when I got my first kit. And those they're three pretty different drummers as well. I got to see Elvin Jones do a drum clinic in Seattle at Jazz Alley. My drum teacher took me to go see that, and he was 72 at the time and just ripping, just not.
He's a ripping drummer for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think he played from 8 years old until the day he died. I think he died at 74. He played, I mean, that was his whole life. But he was a very unique, weird drummer. And I got to see that right at the beginning of when I started learning to play. So I think that was really important. Sure. And then there were two drummers who I really, really admired at that time. One was Dale Crover, and the other was Sarah Lund. So Dale Crover from Melvins and Sarah Lund from Unwound. I was getting to see those bands because they were playing regionally a lot right when I was starting to play. And just those two in particular stood out to me. Yeah, I mean, there were tons, of course, but those are the three that kind of stand out in my memory as at that particular time when I was just starting to learn, I was super inspired by. And then the very first, so I jammed with neighborhood kids that I hung out with at the time, but the very first band that I ever played in was with this really, really weird guitar player that I met through a mutual friend, and her style was extremely unique. And so we played together for 7 years. And so that first 7 years of learning to write songs with somebody on drums was with a really unique musician. So I think that, I'm pretty sure that had a strong influence on me not just being a 4-on-the-floor drummer, because her riffs were not 4-on-the-floor.
Right. Kind of like, what was your style kind of like?
It's kind of hard to explain. It wasn't super genre specific. I mean, we were a noisy rock band, but she just had a unique style that kind of incorporated a lot of different genres. It's very unique to her. I've not heard anybody else that I would compare her to.
So she really had her own thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I was going to ask you about like how the band started. Like you met, I think I read enough interviews to know that you met Ben and Dana after they had met and they started playing, and then they sort of were friends with you at first, and then they asked you to play. Am I wrong?
Roughly, Ben and I met a long time before Helms Alee started. Actually, that band I was just talking about, he recorded us. He recorded one of our first records. So I met him. He was playing in Harkonnen, and our band was playing the same venues and stuff. So we just sort of crossed paths by being in the nature of being in the same neighborhood, playing music, and hit it off as friends. And he recorded an album for us, and we just kind of were really quickly, we were fast friends. And then some years went by. He moved to Seattle at the time. He was living in Tacoma, and he moved to Seattle, and we sort of lost touch for a bit. And then, but like never stopped being friends, just kind of weren't really seeing each other on the reg anymore. And then, then he hit me up out of nowhere, like just, hey, how you doing style. And we chatted on the phone for a while, and we were asking each other what we were up to musically. And at the time I was playing guitar in a band. And he told me that he and Dana had met and were playing music together, but they were having trouble finding a drummer. Like they had gone through a few that just for one reason or another didn't work out. And I was like, well, I'm a drummer. And he was like, oh man, it didn't even occur to me to ask you because you've got your other band, you've got that band going on. I just assumed you were busy with that. And I was like, oh man, I miss playing drums. Like I'm super down. So yeah, shortly after that, we got together, and it was, classic, like, oh, we're just gonna, make music in the practice space and maybe play a few shows regionally. But no big plans. But we fell in love musically, the three of us immediately. It was like, just clicked. And so, 14 years later.
14, that's a long time. And like, having good chemistry between people when you play music is a real rare thing, as I've learned after like 20 bands over like a 30-year period. It's really hard to come by.
It's extremely precious, yeah.
Yeah, you're just, it's like almost this magical thing that you can't really define or describe. You just know if it's there. Mm-hmm. And also by the same hand, when it's not there. Like I'm sure we'll play together and see how it goes. And then things don't work out, and you're like, oh, well, that's just how it goes sometimes, Yeah,
I've totally jammed with friends who I adored as people and was super admired their music. And for whatever reason, it just didn't click between us, and it's had nothing to do with me not liking their style musically or not liking them as an individual. It's just for whatever reason, our styles didn't match up and didn't work. So it's crazy to like meet people where you love each other as friends. We hang out all the time, just kicking it style, not just for practice. And also love their music, and somehow it all clicks together and works is just super, super rare.
I think so. That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask. That was an actual defined question, because I noticed when I met you guys, three of you, and you're ready, that I could see right away that you guys all were really good friends within the band and outside the band, and you all talked about how you were. You hung out all the time, and you were just really good friends, and you had the chemistry musically, and you really liked what you were doing, and all these years later, you're still doing it. And I remember thinking, that's really rare. That's extremely rare. Like you're very lucky to have that. It's almost like a really sweet sitcom or something, because like, you don't really, maybe not a sitcom, but like that doesn't really happen a lot. I certainly haven't seen that happening a lot. So it's like I think Helms Alee are a really good, rare band for that thing. But also like your sound is just always constantly hard to pigeonhole. And that's one of the things I like about it. Like if anybody said, well, what do they sound like? And it's like, well, I don't really know, they sound like a lot of different stuff, but not just one box to put it in. There's a lot going on, and that seems to be like a big strength. I always thought, especially the last two records. Those are my favorite.
It's sort of come into its own in the last few. I agree. We've always sounded like Helms Alee, and I agree that it's when people ask me what kind of music we play, it's really hard for me to figure out how to answer that question other than just weird rock music, which is very general. But it's a funny thing because it's not something we ever talked about, or we don't plan on what, we just get together and play, and that's the shit that comes out is Helms Alee. And it's funny to kind of look back at it at this point, 14 years in, and see how it's really, I mean, we always sound like Helms Alee, you know, when we're putting together, we've been writing a record over COVID. And, you know, it's funny, whenever we're writing and like getting close to finishing a record, that's when I'll kind of go back and want to rehear older stuff of ours. Cause wouldn't normally listen to our music that much, but it just inspires me to want to hear the old stuff and kind of think about the growth and the change. And it's like, you know, I mean, I can see the difference between Helms Alee 2008 versus Helms Alee 2020, but really it's pretty much the same shit still happening. It's just kind of become more cohesive. I think it's a tighter package because we've been doing it together for so long at this point that it's a lot easier for us to write songs together now.
Yeah, it's almost like what you're leaving out is almost as important as what you're putting in, because like, especially on the last record, some of the songs are like they're more like mood pieces, less riffy. There's a lot of chanting going on, and also I feel, well, in a good way, it's not a bad thing. I also think that what's different is that it sounds like, and I could be wrong here, but it sounds like you guys spent more time on singing, perhaps. I might be wrong on that. Maybe I am. I don't know. But it just sounds like it. But there's like this moody sort of chant to like half the songs on the record, and it's sort of it seems more about setting a mood than 12 riffs in a song.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah. And it again, like, there was no intention we didn't start out with that in mind. It's just where we were at the time, where the three of us were separately in our lives and how that came together to make one cohesive piece of artwork. It's interesting. That's part of the thing when I go back and listen to older stuff when we're completing an album, and I can just feel where we were as people when I listen to it, which I know is just by nature of having been there. That's not something that maybe would come across to anyone outside of the band, but it makes me remember what was happening in our lives at that particular time. And I feel like I can hear what we were individually going through at that time when we made the record. And this last one, Noctiluca, a lot of that stuff was written right during, in like 2016 with lots of political turmoil feelings happening, and shit was feeling kind of gnarly at that time to us. And I can hear that in several of the songs, like just how freaked out and frustrated we were. And then the record before that, Still Aside, we recorded that in Salem, Massachusetts. And I feel like it was just a really, it was, dead of winter, cold, dark vibes. And we lived in the studio in Salem while we were recording it. And so I can like feel Salem in that record.
Right. Well, geez, I wonder what your new music's gonna sound like, since you said that the last record was done during this weird feeling, and I don't know if you can get any weirder than like what's been going on this year and just dealing with that. And
yeah.
I'm
sure that years down the road, listening to what we made during COVID, it'll be super obvious. Right now, it feels like we're writing songs, but it can't not be influenced by the fact that we're writing them in this context.
Yeah, it's definitely a bizarre time. For me, it's like not much has changed, because like I'm sort of introverted and I don't really like being around a lot of people, and I don't get out of the house much because of Willow, and Kristen has her daughter that's here some of the time, and so there's always a lot going on. So I haven't really had to develop a lot of coping mechanisms for this year, which has been kind of good, but every once in a while I'll have a bad day. And then the other thing I've been doing is just kind of ignoring social media, or at least when I'm not using it to try to continue to be a self-employed person, I'm just trying to stay away from being forced into having an opinion about everything.
Yeah.
Because this is how people kind of communicate these days, for better or for worse, for the most part. Has any of that stuff affected you, or did you make any decisions about how you were going to handle? Because you don't seem like somebody that's really a part of social media that much anyway. Or
I'm not. Yeah. I mean, I have Instagram and I, like to post pretty pictures of shit that I see. And I like to see what my friends are up to that I don't, I've got friends all over the place that I don't get to see that often, especially now. So it's nice to see what they're up to. I'm real good at ignoring the noise because I don't want it, and it doesn't help my situation at all mentally. There's enough input. There's enough, scary, gnarly, negative input in the world. So I just don't need it. I don't need another source of that. So, I don't just in general, don't really have much of like an addiction to social media at all, so it's pretty easy for me to ignore and avoid any of that shit. And like right when COVID, when stuff started getting extra gnarly and the lockdowns were happening, when they kicked in here, Helms Alee took, I think 3 weeks of a break from playing, because it was just like, we're not supposed to, supposed to do that. And then about that far in, about 3 weeks in, we just got in touch and we're like, this is not working. I'm going to murder suicide. So this is going to get real ugly if I don't. I mean, we all three were on the same page. Like, we need to play music together. We can't have this not be, we need that catharsis during this time more than ever. So we moved out of our practice space and moved into Ben's amp shop, and where he had set up a studio, and we started practicing there and writing the record there, because that way it was in a space that wasn't a public, it wasn't a public practice space where strangers are going in and out all the time. So it was a way for us to kind of, we just joined each other's quarantine, and we're like, we're in the family together, and we're going to be in this together, and we'll just not go to the practice space. We'll be at Varel and Amps recording, and that'll be a way for us to not go totally insane.
Yeah, you gotta do something.
Mm-hmm. And then all the civil unrest shit started happening, and it was real central to where we were at. It's like Seattle. It got gnarly in Seattle, and so it was just all the more just throwing it on the trash pile of shit going on that made it more and more important for us to be able to play music together and have some way to thrash out these feelings.
Oh yeah, I've drawn more this year than probably any other year, and I've drawn plenty. Not just because of it's what I have to do to make money, but also just because I just wanted to keep doing it. Because if I didn't do it, I would just kind of, if I don't draw after even just a couple of days, I start to not feel right. If that makes sense. And I played a little bit of drums this year with a friend of mine recording stuff, but I really do miss playing drums. And I thought for sure I was, I'm gonna be retired or whatever, but it's like, I miss it, for sure. So I totally understand.
It's such a primal release, like just bashing the drum.
But also, like, do you have when you play, you know how it is when you're done playing a show and you know that you did really good, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be for the other two people in your band to also have a good time, but when everybody plays good, it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a feeling that's really hard to beat. There's few things that feel as satisfying as that, and that happens regardless of who's there and or how much money you make. And toward the end of my drumming career, that was pretty much what I had to look forward to. That every third or fourth show where everything went really well.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, yes, this is what I'm this is why I'm doing that. So I definitely understand.
It's
Plus,
crazy how those shows, like those really, really good ones, can just erase all of the miserable shit that you've gone through to get to that show. You know, like there's a lot of struggle involved in getting to that place, and it totally just wipes the slate clean.
I don't know if you can talk about the recording that I think you did with the Melvins, but I haven't really talked to any of those guys in a while. So I think I did hear that you guys went down to do a collaboration. Are you at? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't know when that thing is coming out or I don't really have any details about that, but yeah, they hit us up and invited us to come down and record at Toshi's studio and do just a collaboration. I guess they've done a few of these, you know, where they just do short recordings with bands that they like. And so they invited us to come down, and we went over the holidays, like right after Christmas, I think December 26th, we went down and spent a few days in the studio there. We had kind of pre-planned which songs we wanted, like what we wanted to do. So we did one Helms Alee song, one Melvins song, and a cover, and one original wrote from scratch. And so it was kind of like whirlwindy. So we just laid down a bunch of our shit, and those guys were hanging out and listening, and you know, I guess brainstorming for what they would do once we left, because we left and then the COVID shit happened and they weren't able to get back into the studio to do their parts until very recently. In fact, I think they might still be working on their parts. So other than the original that obviously we did that all together, but the other stuff, they were basically going to come back in and do their shit on top of what we did when we were down there. And it was super fun. It was great. I'm really excited to hear the end result. I have no idea. I don't know what to expect because, like I said, they're doing it all after we left. So it'll be a surprise to us.
Right. Was the cover you did, was it At the Stake?
Well, we did one Melvin song and one Helms Alee song, but then we did a cover of a different, not either of our bands.
Oh, okay. Because I remember I had like heard a recording, or I saw a video of you doing At the Stake.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you had recorded that
we
song.
Did. Yeah.
Yes. that was really good, man. That was an excellent cover.
Oh man, that was so fun. I've wanted to cover that song since I was a teenager. That's just been one of my lifetime favorite songs. And so yeah, that was extremely fun.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. See, that's what I was kind of hoping. So thanks for confirming that.
Our pleasure.
Great. How's everybody else doing?
Same, I mean, it's like life is good with the exception of all this bullshit. We're all healthy people that have good families and friends and, jobs, and none of us are starving. We all have cozy homes. And we've been making a point to have fun together. So we all went sailing Ben has a sailboat. We all went sailing yesterday on the lake. So we're making a point to keep
enjoy life.
Yeah. Enjoy life as best we can.
No matter what.
Yeah.
There should be a Helms Alee sitcom. Like the rarest of bands, the rarest of examples. Look, after 14 years, they're going sailing on a boat. The pandemic. Fun no matter what. Fuck it.
We still together.
Very nice.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend recently about, because, everybody's still experiencing life. So bad, unfortunate shit happens, things change, whatever, all life is still happening while this pandemic and this social unrest and natural disasters and all these things just piling on top of each other. And so it's like everybody's baseline is pretty fucked right now. Like just the baseline. And then anything that goes on top of that is just a result of being alive and things happening, changes and stuff, becomes that much more elevated in your brain of, you know, it's like harder to handle stuff that normally when life throws it at you, it's like, oh, that's a bummer, that's frustrating or difficult. But you can handle it because your baseline is normal. Yeah. And when your baseline is up here instead of down here, then it's a lot harder to keep your cool when normal life curveballs get thrown at you.
Yeah. Well, oddly, this is going to sound dumb, but oddly enough, because of those situations I was telling you about, it makes, you know, like you're not on social media, but a lot of people go online and they're like looking for a fight, or they're expected to react to every bit of misery in the world. That's one of the drawbacks. You know, things have always, you know, life, no one ever said life was fair, and people have always been terrible. But now you know, instantly, all the time, 24 hours a day, all that stuff. Whereas before, it's like, you know, like being a little bit older, I came of age before all that stuff. And like when I look back, I just think the world was fine before all that stuff. You know? And now you're just expected to be angry at people you've never met in situations you're never going to experience. And, you know, so the whole thing is just really weird. So I guess what I'm saying is the pandemic is fucked, and the election's fucked, and this guy sucks and that guy sucks. But when you actually have a real life situation like that, it kind of makes all this imaginary stuff that people, it's a luxury problem.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's animal nature to seek that shit out to some degree.
Well, it's like tribalism or something, where it's like
exactly.
Like I don't, you know, I don't like. I don't want to even mention his name, but I'm not a big fan of the president. But I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of thinking that anybody that likes him is my mortal enemy if I don't know them. You know what I mean? Like it's just grouping all these people together, and you know, and it just seems like people just want to be. They want to be on teams, and they want
herd mentality, right?
Yeah, herd mentality, and like we talk about this all the time, and it's just so weird that people are. It's almost like they've forgotten what it's like to be a human being anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And then the other side of the coin is people are really into witch hunt culture, so it's kind of weird to see people that actively are looking for other strangers to ruin their lives.
Yeah.
It's just really strange, you know. It's a weird time.
It is. Yeah, and I feel like that whole thing, you know, like you were talking about hating people you don't know, based on some perception, some definition that you've put onto them because of where they lie politically. It feels just as gross to me. Like I too do not like the president. I want that person to go away forever, very much. But but I don't feel like it's helpful or meaningful or makes me a better person or the world a better place for me to just automatically write off anybody who affiliates with that political party or that world, you know. It just I totally agree. Feels counterproductive to me. It feels like, well, then I'm just as shitty as they are. You know, if I'm trying to separate myself from something that I don't identify with and don't agree with, but I'm going to behave just as childishly and be just as judgmental and hateful as the people that I am claiming to be different from, then what the fuck? Like, then I'm not different. And I'm not helping, and I'm not happy, and I'm not bringing joy to anybody around me. Like, and I'm not making the world a better place by being that way. And so I'm not going to fucking be that way. And I'm not going to just automatically, write people off or call people the devil for disagreeing with me. You know, I'm down to have conversations about it. I am down to disagree. That's part of life on earth, you know. I disagree with my best of friends all the time on shit, you know, but it's like, it's a respectful understanding that we are individuals and we have that right we have the right to disagree.
You also have the right to change your mind. Like, I'm not so sure I know everything. In fact, I know I don't know everything.
Right.
I did that a long time ago. You know, it's like, and the older I get, the less I know, and that, I think that's a good way to be, because that means I'm open to being wrong and I'm open to changing my mind. And a lot of what goes on today is just filled with people that think they know everything and refuse to change their mind. Like nothing's going to budge them. You know, so you just have this brick wall thing. And then when you actually don't talk to a human, this is what I mean about people forgetting what it's like to be a human being. It's like when you actually aren't talking to somebody face to face or through a screen, you can't really see that, oh, this is a real person. The way they're reacting to what I'm saying, you know, it's a lot different than somebody typing some bullshit anonymously to a stranger, you know.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to make eye contact with them, you know. You don't have to look at somebody's face while you're saying hurtful shit.
You also don't have to be slapped in the head when you say something really shit to somebody, when most people would actually do that. So it's a weird time. And people just, I think people have forgotten what it's like to be a human being.
Yeah. I just went on a road trip with my dad and younger sister. My sister's 15 years younger than me, and our dad is 70. And so we historically have done these father-daughter road trips every few years, and it's just been a huge chunk of time since we hadn't. And pandemic and all, we decided to go up to the peninsula here in Washington and go hang out in the rainforest and at the ocean and stuff like that together. And it was a really, really fun trip for a lot of different reasons. But one of my favorite elements of it was that we had these three, I mean, we're all pretty, in the big picture, the three of us are very aligned in how we feel about life and the country and the world and all the shit going on. We're generally aligned on. But, you know, my sister's 24. And so she has a 24-year-old perspective on these things. And then our 70-year-old dad has a 70-year-old perspective, and I'm somewhere in the middle. And so we had tons of really intense conversations and debates about how we feel about all this stuff. And again, you know, we disagreed on a lot of stuff, but we're able to have like meaningful dialogue.
Dialogue.
Thank you. We were able to have meaningful dialogue where we were able to like help each other see where we were coming from, change each other's minds, and see things from a different perspective. Because, you know, obviously a 70-year-old and a 24-year-old are going to have different perspectives on the same topic. Even if they generally agree, there's going to be a lot of differences there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our dad's seen a whole bunch more shit than we have, you know, because he's been alive longer. Anyway, it was super valuable to me, and I felt like I gained a lot and learned a lot from being able to have these really safe yet intense conversations and debates about topics that are really emotional. I wish there was more of that, I guess. I wish there was more of people had the ability to, you know, feel safe in disagreement and take the time to really understand where someone is coming from that doesn't see things the way that you see them, you know?
Yeah.
It's missing from our society right now.
Yeah, because because you don't know what that person's been through. You don't know what their life has been like, or why they came to the conclusions that they came to. It sounds like another sitcom is what you're describing.
Yeah.
Family goes away on nice little vacation, has intense, meaningful discussions about everybody's happy. Well, the book that's coming out, a lot of it has to do with people that are, and I don't think you're this kind of a person, but I'll set it up. People that are kind of like self-employed in some aspect, whether it's part-time through like existing with a, through a band, doing that kind of thing, or me, just drawing for a living. And the book's basically about people that are trying to get by with their creative outlets and maybe not necessarily a real job. Not everybody in my book is like that. Some people I thought were self-employed are like, no, I work for this big company, but I'm still a book writer, and I was stupid enough to think that they fed a family through like writing a handful of books, which obviously. But I'm not sure what you do for a living, but I think it has something to do with the ocean, maybe. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I have two loves in this life, in terms of like career type things. One is music, of course, and never paid the bills with that, but but that doesn't matter. And then the other is marine science. So I kind of have two jobs at the moment in that world. And things are of course different and weird right now because of COVID, but my main job is through the Puyallup tribe, which I'm a member of, and I work with the shellfish department at the Puyallup tribe, doing survey dives of gooey duck harvest beds.
Really?
So I started out, I became a gooey duck harvester about 10 years ago. They're just these big, gnarly clams that are considered a delicacy in Asian countries. And so they're worth a lot of money because they only really grow here in this region. Right. They're super abundant, or they were. They're getting less and less abundant. But so I got that job because I had just had like a long history of shitty jobs that I could quit and go on tour and not care about,
Yeah, of course.
Classic tale. But so I found out about this. I found out that this job existed through the tribe and that it's independent contractor work. So you don't have a boss necessarily, that you don't have to ask for time off. It's just if you're not working, you're not getting paid. And so I signed up for the training, and that job involved surface supplied air diving. That's like the helmet, and where you have, it's like dog on a leash, they call it, where you have air getting pumped to you from the boat, from a generator up there, and comms so you can talk to the people on the boat, and you just walk along the seabed, and you have a high pressure water hose thing that you use to basically dig out these clams, because they're super strong, really hard to dig out, and they're usually roughly 3 feet under the surface.
How big are
they? They live like, I think the oldest recorded one is something like 180 years old, and they can be as long as my arm, they can be huge. They're super grody. They kind of look like dicks and pussies at the same time. There's this big long siphon that's very phallic, and then the underside is pretty vaginal. So they're gnarly. They are delicious though. If you like seafood and you like clam flavor.
Are you a fan of seafood?
I am, yeah. I like gooey ducks better than I like most clams because they're not like chewy kind of loogie things. They're
like chewing on some rubber, sort of like.
Yeah.
How far down do you go to get to the bottom?
So I don't harvest them anymore now. I do the surveys, but for that job, it's as deep as 70 feet and as shallow as 20 feet are the legal limits for harvesting. So I did that job for 6 years, and I just fell in love with, like I said, I signed up for the training to do that job because I was like, oh, sweet. I won't have to ask for time off to go on tour. It makes good money. It seems kind of fun and scary and adventurous. And mostly it was just the appeal to me at that time was not having to, being able to go on tour whenever I wanted. But I fell in love with that environment down there through that job. And then I decided after 6 years, I didn't want to be doing the harvesting anymore. And so I flipped the coin and started doing the survey work. So pays way less and it's seasonal. It's not nearly as glamorous of a job, but I love it very much. And that's just regular scuba diving where I'm just kicking along counting geoducks and also noting other stuff. Like we monitor the health of eelgrass beds, and we monitor sea cucumbers, sea urchins, shrimps, and crabs.
Right.
So it's kind of just, it's the sustainability part of it. It's making sure that we're not over harvesting and that the health of that environment down there is being sustained so that people will still be able to harvest them years down the road. So that's one of my jobs, and that has been pretty solidly on hold since COVID. But the work that I have been able to continue doing is these beach surveys. So it's kind of similar, only it's on the beach instead of underwater, where I'm assisting with this oyster restoration project through University of Washington, Tacoma. And so I go out with this group of people and we're like counting critters on the beach and documenting all sorts of environmental situations that are happening on these very particular beaches that these projects are happening on. And that work has been saving my ass during COVID as well, because it gets me outside regularly with people that are like-minded, that, just are, saltwater nerds, marine science nerds that like to geek out on barnacles and mussels and crabs and sea slugs and stuff. And outside it feels healthy, and it feels physically healthy and emotionally healthy to be out there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm in school I'm working towards a bachelor's degree in environmental science, but focused on marine science specifically.
Wow.
I love it down there. That's my spot. Like in my next life, I want to be bull kelp. I want to just be some kelp in a kelp bed forest. That's what I'd like to be in my next life if I could have any control over it.
That's awesome. Well, that's certainly the most unique thing I've heard from anybody since I started doing these things, what they're doing with their time or what their profession is. But that's awesome. Sounds like you really truly love what you're doing.
Oh yeah, it very much.
Which makes you twice as lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I never thought that would be. I have long thought that music was going to be my love for the rest of my life, and this whole thing happened 10 years ago. Came way out of left field. Like I was not anticipating a second career and a whole other thing that I would be so enamored with,
So it wasn't even like a childhood fascination with anything?
Not really. I mean, I grew up hanging out on the beaches here. I was born and raised in Tacoma, and we have, in my opinion, some very beautiful beaches, although they're not like classically beautiful. When you think of the beach, you think of like sandy, warm, and that is not the situation here, but I love them. They're really rugged and gnarly, and to me, that's extremely beautiful. So I grew up hanging out on those beaches my whole life, and for sure have always had fun with that, but I never thought I would want to dive. The water is really murky and dark and cold here, so I was like pretty scared of it. I swam in it, but I was always like creeped out by that you can't really see anything unless it's right next to you,
Yeah, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, which I love now. That to me, that is part of its charm. But when I was growing up, I was terrified of it.
Do you go down when you used to do that stuff? Would you have to go down with a light to be able to see?
Sometimes, not as a harvester, you wouldn't, because the light you drum up a bunch of silt because you're digging them out, and so you're kind of just, if you have a light, you're just lighting up more silt. But for my survey job, in the summertime, wintertime here, the water is actually pretty clear. But in the summer, we get these really intense algae blooms. And so it will be like a cup of coffee. It's like diving in a cup of coffee. So, and those algae blooms, usually are closer towards the surface, obviously, because they need sunlight. And so you'll drop down through like roughly 15 or 20 feet of this really thick murk of algae, and you get below it and it's just pitch black because that algae has blocked out the sun that, that would normally be coming down with you, that would light up the substrate down there when you're at 60 feet or whatever. That is gone because it's blocked out by the algae. So that's the cases where we have lights that we strap onto our heads. Those dives are pretty scary because that's like, you're at 70 feet, you have no idea, you have just no idea what's coming at you until it's right there. And it's pretty fun. Sometimes you'll all of a sudden just look up and you're like this close to like a sunken skiff, some kind of old boat or something down there that's just covered in anemones and, cool fish hanging out around it. But you just had no idea that you were coming toward it until it's right there.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like an underwater haunted house or something.
Yeah, totally. There's one spot in Puget Sound that has somebody sunk these two, a Santa Claus and a Frosty the Snowman sculpture that are both about like human height. They're like 5 feet tall, and they've been down there a really long time. And so they're covered in algae and barnacles and crap like that. And they'll have like, like a sea star on its face. It's just super, super creepy. Totally horror movie. Yeah, that shit's awesome to me. I love it. It's like real beautiful to my eyes.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron's gonna say hi to you.
Hey, how you doing, Aaron? What's going on?
Good, yeah. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. How's life?
It's different.